Um, Good morning, everyone, once again. So we're all welcome to today's session, and I strongly believe that we are ready to learn as usual, but this time around, dropping whatever knowledge we have previously and coming on board to receive fresh knowledge. So today we are going to be looking at understanding civic rights and responsibility. But before we delve in, I would like to say that our facilitator is already here. Um, Before I introduce him, I would like to do a check and get to know how everyone is doing. So, Pascal, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Good morning, Ruth. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. That's fine. So, Charity, hope you're feeling better today. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. Good morning, everyone.
All right, that's fantastic. So, Gabriel, how are you doing this morning? Can Gabriel hear me? All right. Till Gabriel gets to unmute himself. Now, I'll go back to our facilitator. So, Mr. Sule Jacob, hope you're feeling well this morning.
Sure, Bruce, thank you for asking.
All right, so that's lovely to know. So we're going to do a little icebreaker, and it's going to be very straightforward and very simple since we don't even have much time on our hands, because I know it's going to be a very long time learning. So I will start with Pascal. How it's going to go is this. You're going to tell me one very important key expectation you have for today's session and why you feel it's important. So one expectation from today's section, and also why do you feel your expectation is important? So, Pascal, over to you.
Okay. One expectation is to understand my own rights now as a citizen. And why I feel that is important is if you do not understand your right as a citizen, then there's no how you can hold the leaders accountable. There's no how you will also know when people are, stepping on your rights. So you are literally going to be vulnerable to whatever anybody says. So it is very, very key. Is almost unavoidable that a citizen like myself gets to know what are my rights as a citizen. So that's my expectation, and that's what I feel is the reason why it is important.
All right, that's fantastic. That's good to know. So, Charity, over to you. What is one key thing you expect in today's learning session, and why do you feel it's important?
Okay, so just like Pascal said, my expectation is to have a better understanding of my civic rights and duties as a citizen. And I think that's important because as an advocate, as a civic champion, how am I going to hold these stakeholders, these policymakers accountable? How am I going to go about knowing my rights and also convincing my fellow youth to participate and ask for their rights if I don't understand my rights?
All right, so that's good to know. So, Gabriel, can you talk now? Can you hear us, Gabriel? All right, so I don't think Gabriel can hear us. So, without wasting time, I would love to introduce our amiable speaker. So you can look at my screen. I'm about to share my screen. All right. So in our midst this morning is a very distinguished personality, someone who has been making impact over time. Jacob Sule is the executive director of I Read to Live initiative, a lawyer specializing in higher education research, human rights litigation, and advocacy for the right to education. He founded I Read to Live to promote quality education, civic education, and the UN SDGs in rural Nigeria. A 2019 International Literacy Association Award recipient. He's a Global Advisory Council member of KDSL, a competence trainer with Inspire Citizens, and a 100 ambassador. His work supports young leaders and professionals in community-driven projects and cross-sector collaboration. So we are so delighted to have Mr. Sule Jacob in our midst this morning. Please, could we kindly show some appreciation? Could we, welcome him warmly in our midst this morning? So, Mr. Sule Jacob, you're highly welcome, and we are happy to have you. We're not going to take this time for granted. We strongly believe that by the end of the session, we'll be leaving with a whole lot. So thank you so much, sir. You're highly welcome. So the floor is open to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ruth, good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you all. First, I'd like to thank you for reaching out and extending an invitation to me to share my thoughts with the fellows that you have who are set to learn more and be the next global change makers in our dear country, Nigeria. I do hope we have a great time together. Please feel free to interact and ask questions whenever you feel you need to make any clarification. I have a few slides I'd like to share. Hold on 1 second, please. Hopefully I'm able to put that on. But I think, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I just want to see if I'm able to pull up my slides. Well, if I'm able to do that, I'll try to do that before the end of the session. So I've been asked to speak on understanding civic rights and civic responsibility. I know many of us here are relatively young, probably looking forward to be engaging with the state of affairs in our country, our beloved country, Nigeria. But oftentimes, I think we all seems to de-emphasize the need for us to actually do things appropriately. So I'll be very brief and I'll try as much as possible to be very interactive. So if you have any questions or any thoughts, feel free to use the chat box or just unmute yourself and then we can move forward from there. When you say understanding civic rights and responsibility, there are two things that is required of us, me and you. One, you want to understand that yes, indeed, there are civic rights, and also you do have responsibilities as a citizen of Nigeria to make sure that you fulfill your duties as a citizen of Nigeria. When it comes to understanding your civic rights, the question you want to ask yourself is, are there really duties that you need to understand? What are really the most important things that you need to know as a Nigerian citizen? Are these rights only applicable to the Nigerian community, or they are also applicable to other people who, by virtue of extension or whatever you might think of, are just Nigerian citizens by naturalization, by birth, by affiliation, or what have you? So the most important thing I want to talk about is, one, as young people, as youth, as global change makers, you have a duty to actually have an understanding of what you want to even talk about. You have an understanding to know that they are right. I will go from the legal perspective first, which says, what are rights? Rights are basic, inalienable features that are generally applicable to you as a result of being human. You have blood flowing through your veins. And then when you look through the history of rights in the world, you would know that there are basic things that needs to be put in place for you to be able to lay hold or lay claim to certain rights that you say you have. And also when it comes to responsibility, it says that as young people, regardless of the language you speak, the color of your skin, your religion affiliation, your academic qualification, or even your sexual orientation. There are certain requirements, there are certain responsibilities that you need to do, or there are certain responsibilities that you need to check out for you to be able to enjoy this right and be able to understand them. The first question I would ask is, as young people, if you are given 1,000 naira now, what do you think you would do with that 1,000 naira? Would you rather put food on your table? Would you rather use that 1,000 to learn more about your rights? Or you'd rather use that 1,000 to buy data subscription into your phone? Charity, what are your thoughts about that? Would you use the 1,000 to buy food, buy a Richard card, or just use to do something else entirely, or to understand your rights? Yes, Charity?
I think it's the circumstances surrounding the 1,000 naira that would determine. So right now, I can't really say for sure what I'll use that 1,000 naira to do or to learn my rights,
Okay.
because I don't know the circumstances.
All right, Charity doesn't know what she's going to do with the 1,000 naira. Pascal, you're given 1,000 naira. You have to put food on your table. You have to buy Richard card, and you need to invest that money to understand your basic rights. What are the options you're going to go for, Pascal?
Okay. I'll have to get food first. If three of them are standing by themselves, take food, you have just 1,000, and that's just the only money, 1,000, and I'm to choose between these three, definitely I'll get food first. So I don't know what the intention of the donor is, but I will definitely get food first.
Okay, Pascal, thank you. Pascal would go for food. And then you're wondering, you're being given that same 1,000 to Caroline, and then you have to get food, same applicable and preferences. Caroline, what are you going to use the 1,000 naira for? Okay, I would pass it on to Aliyu. You have 1,000 naira, same variable, same values, same living circumstances. What are you going to use the 1,000 naira for?
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Shule. Yeah, I'm trying not to follow Pascal Okeke, but basically I'll go for food first. Then the change from the money, that's what I'll use to, continue the civic process.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So, we all have given almost the same answer, except for Charity, who did say she wanted to know the surrounding circumstances. And I think that's the ideal nature of every man. People want to know, oh, if I use this 1,000 naira to do this, what is the next, like, what am I going to do subsequently? Where am I getting my next food from? And quite frankly, there are no right or wrong answers. But what I just want to pick up from that is, as citizens of Nigeria, we need to put our priorities right. In the process of setting our priorities right, you cannot have a right if you're dead. Although there's this perception that says, oh, even the dead has rights. But again, in the reality of it, you need to be able to put food on your table. So there are really no preference in which you can use to justify whatever you would want to do. Now, the reason I asked that question is to see if we all really have a genuine interest in what we're trying to do here today. And I can say that I'm excited because everyone is talking about food, everyone is talking about living situation, and everyone is talking about the circumstances in which surround the 1,000. Some even went forward to talk about the donor requirement or terms of reference for using the supposed 1,000 naira. This brings me to another perspective of what I call the role of citizens in a democracy. I'm sure many of us did civic education back in school, or even what we call maybe governments in our secondary school, or what have you. And there's this popular definition of democracy by this, for this, and for that. And then there's something very important in that definition. It talks about humans. democracy by the people, for the people, and of the people. Have you ever thought of asking yourself, why has the word people consistently replicated itself in that definition? Does anybody know why? Pascal, do you know why that word, that phrase, people, has consistently repeated itself in the definition of democracy? Do you want to quickly jump in on that?
I think it's because it's a very simple definition that directly identifies with us. Saying it's a government of the people and by the people and for the people, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be. Even though we may not say it is so, perhaps in our own situation, but then I think that is what it's supposed to be. So is easily connecting, and it identifies with us. That's what I think.
Thank you. Aliyu, don't you think Pascal has shared, do you agree with Pascal's thoughts on what he just said about people? Why don't you think the definition should have been government of the rich, for the poor, and for the oppressed? Do you have any different opinion on that?
Not really. Sadly, in Nigeria, it's government of the rich, which shouldn't be. But basically, I really do think the definition, just like Pascal said, should be about the people, because government is all about service. Leadership is all about the leaders that are being served. So I agree with Pascal in his response to what you asked earlier.
Thank you, Aliyu. Let me turn it over to Charity. Don't you think democracy should just be about social media trends, who is trending on X, and engagement and dragging for those who don't have social media access, or for those in rural area? Do you think that definition of democracy would have been a perfect one based on what we have currently in Nigeria?
I don't think so. I don't think it will be a perfect one, especially with all the goings in the country. We can still see people that have the most trending videos or the most trending likes, but they are not doing the right thing. So I really don't think that will be a perfect definition of democracy.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. And so for me, or based on this presentation, I would limit ourselves to just humans and people in Nigeria. Now, what is the role of a citizen in a democracy? You all have used the phrase, which I carefully listened to: you think, you think, you think, not that you know. So that is one thing in which we need to address. Civic education, understanding your civic rights, understanding your role as a citizen in a democracy is not about your thoughts. It should be ideally about what you know, so that when you are treated in a very uncomfortable way, you can stand and say, hey, you have treated me wrongly. I want to seek redress in court. I deliberately allowed you all to share your thoughts, saying you think, until we as citizens begin to know and stop thinking, oh, could it be this? Then I think we would continually fail in our responsibility and role in building a credible and sustainable democracy in Nigeria, in Africa, and around the world. So the role of citizens is not to think about their rights in a democracy. The role of citizens are to know their rights, duties, and responsibility in a democracy. And how do you do that? You engage your government. In the process of engaging, we all have all fallen short of our basic and initial consistency requirements that we need to do. Oftentimes, we see many young people, when things don't go well in the country, the first thing we do is we want to call out the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ignoring the fact that we do have state governors. Even though in an unideal situation where we don't have functional local government, we all want to put our focus on the federal. Everybody wants to go to Abuja and lead protests in Abuja. Everybody wants to go to Lagos and shut down airports, shut down the national grid, and then constitute nuisance, because we all are thinking that the president should be the one to come and provide the next borehole in your local government. The president should be the one who wants to come and provide primary healthcare service in your local government, because we are thinking the government should be the one who wants to come and fix that transformer, that electricity in our local government. And that's why today this conversation is so important, so that so that someone like Aliyu, someone like Victoria, someone like Ruth, someone like Pascal, and someone like Charity can actually understand the role in which they have in building citizen engagement in a democracy. The first thing you can do in understanding your role is first to understand what are your rights. If you do not understand your rights, you truly cannot do anything. You will just be moved around by circumstances and say, oh, okay, if this is where the trends are today, let me help them to trend this thing in Nigeria for the purpose of dragging social media trends. So as citizens, our role is to be actively involved in the process of democracy. Many a times, we only do one fraction of that part, and that is mostly when elections are probably 8 months away. At the latest, 4 weeks away, you begin to see emergency lovers of Nigeria, people who want to be just involved, and when elections are over, people automatically go back into their hibernation mode. No, there are more to that beyond just casting your ballot. And that's why I'm very much proud of the work in which some nonprofits are doing, just like what you guys are doing here. And there's this nonprofit called Budget, trying to make governmentary funding, budgetary allocation easy for people who are not even educated to know, okay, my senator in this part of Nigeria earns X amount of money, and this money is meant to do this and that. But as citizens, if we don't engage these our representatives, we cast our ballots for them to go into maybe the state House of Assemblies or the federal House of Assemblies or the Senate to represent us. But oftentimes, we as citizens, we don't engage these people. The only thing that we do is you want to ask a senator who probably because lives in Abuja, you want the person to place you in a very juicy government department, or you find somebody who wants to give you a job in a multinational organization, and you go to your senator, oh, senator, this and that, could you write me a reference letter for this and that? So I think we as citizens, we need to become more engaging. We need to ask we need to ask great questions. We need to challenge the narrative, and then we need to call for audience. So one of our role, citizens in a democracy, is to know your rights. And in knowing your rights, it doesn't have to do with your thoughts. You have to commit your time. Read the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Read about this right so that you can understand the things in which you have access to, and the things in which you need to build on, so that you can have basic access to things and can be able to raise questions. Having said that, I want to pivot into the next focus, which is on understanding how government function. Oftentimes, like I said, we ignore the role of the local government administration. But that isn't our fault, but it's just unfortunate in which we have a one-sided type of governance in Nigeria, where the local government have been reduced to toothless bulldog, and we can't really do anything. So as citizens, as young people who are going on this fantastic project or this learning process with this organization, you need to be able to understand how government functions. How does government function at the state level, the local level, and at the federal level? For you to understand how the government functions in these 3 tiers of government, you need to be, one, knowledgeable enough. So when I mean knowledgeable, it doesn't mean that you need to have a college degree or an high school certification, but I think the basic things you should be able to understand this thing. So the way government works is, in an ideal setting, the government at the local level should be concerned and have sole and exclusive responsibility on basic things, issues on roads. When I mean roads, I mean trunk C roads. So trunk C roads are roads that are being constructed and managed by local government administration. Trunk B are state roads, while trunk A are federal roads, just for a little bit of perspective. So in understanding that, you want to know that in a local government, it is the duty of your local government chairman or your chairwoman or your caretaker committee or councillors to be able to fix B. When you're able to understand that, it will give you the leverage to be able to say, okay, Who am I going to hold accountable? If there is no water in this community, if there's no lights, if the schools in this area are not working, if there is no primary health care, if Ruth is the sitting local government chairman or the local government administration, we want to be able to hold Ruth accountable, not ideally by protest, not ideally by just holding on to the street, but you want to be able to know the basic things to do so that you know how to set your priorities right. But oftentimes, as people in Nigeria, we are such a very emotional people in which including me, we're so emotional that we mostly disregard the role of local government. And until we are able to understand who and who to hold account and who to question, I don't think we would really do more. So for you going on this learning experience, I hope you've been able to see that there's a need for you to start your work from the local government in which you reside. You need to be able to know how much is budgeted in the allocation for your state. If I should ask any of you on this call now, how many of you even know where the local government office administration of your local government are? Everyone is so concerned about Abuja. Everyone is so concerned about the state government, but no one is talking about what is happening to that woman in that local government who doesn't even have access to primary health care. So for we as young people who's trying to be the next global change maker or the next global leader, you want to be able to understand your duty starting from local government. When that is done, then we can now produce to the state level. And when it comes to the state level, there are so many fantastic things happening there. First, you want to defer to what I call the state houses of assemblies. Let me ask a very important question for someone like Aliyu. Do you by chance know the House of Assembly member representing your constituency in your state? Do you?
Honestly, Mr. Sule, I have to be sincere with you.
I already know your answer.
I don't.
I already know your answer.
I
Pascal,
don't. Yeah.
thank you. Pascal, do you know the House of Assembly member representing your constituency in your state House of Assembly?
I'm right behind Aliyu.
Okay, Charity, do you by chance, maybe you're like, let me give you a benefit of the doubt. Do you by chance know your House of Assembly representative member? House of Assembly member?
Yes, I do.
That's great. So that is 1 out of 2. But I hope everyone else on this call actually takes the initiative to actually know, because if you don't know these people, then how can you understand your civic rights and be able to run with a narrative to ask the right question? So when you're able to identify these persons, for example, issues of school administration, state universities are on strike action, state universities are on protest action, people are trying to advocate for better state roads, people are trying to advocate for improved learning conditions in our institutions, people are trying to advocate for safety in our states. Who do you go in to go and interact with? So I'm sure you've been able to see a trajectory from the local government administration to the state level, and now we're transitioning to the federal level. But oftentimes, I hope that when we all get off this call, we can take our time and do extra check to know who is representing me in my constituency. Who is that House of Rep member? Who is that honorable member? Who is that local government administration? Who is that caretaker, or who is that council chairman? And I believe that if we're able to do that, I think we'll be in a better place than just making the like the general social media noise just because everybody wants to trend and have what they call clouds now in Nigeria. So the way government works in which the way government is supposed to work in the country is when laws are made, the House of Assembly members ideally should interact with the local government administration. When I mean interact, what do I mean? You want to take feedbacks, you want to take suggestions, you want to call for like a town hall meeting. What are the things that you need in this local government? What are the few things that you need to be able to build that representation at the state level? But oftentimes, when we have a local government administration that is so dormant and not engaging, that's why you see that strenuous line items are included in the budget. And you're wondering, why would an organization charged with climate action be the one building schools or be the one building restaurants? And then these are basic things in which I think I know that if we're genuinely interested in understanding how government works, we will be able to hold government accountable. And now I will go to the next part, which is the federal, which many of us are guilty of, including myself. When the road that leads to your apartment, the road that leads to your school is bad, we're quick to take pictures, hashtag APC is a demonic party, PDP is a destructive party, Labour Party is just everywhere. Like, we all are quick to label all of these parties, whereas we are guilty of doing our own constitutional responsibility. So the way government works, it's not just it's not something that starts from the top, ideally. But unfortunately, what we have in Nigeria has shown that we have a very problematic system, which I still have very great concerns and believe that things will get better. So now, as young people on this call, I hope you have been able to see the fact that you need to be engaging from the local level to the states and then to the federal. And now, the way laws or how governments function, like, this will be my last point on this issue, is the role of the federal government is ideally just like what we have in the Constitution. There are things that are supposed to be on the exclusive list and other lists. So, for example, issues of national security, which there have been many advocacies for, state police, what have you, and all that, should be the prerogative of state government. But unfortunately, the Nigerian state does not even trust its own governors. And that's why oftentimes you see that people have been raising questions, oh, why should a governor be the one to control the state police? Because there's an assumption that, okay, the state government might use the state apparatus to want to, deal with opposition parties during elections or even run the ballot for their own favor. But I think one thing I want you all to take away from this conversation this morning is, until you are able to know something, you cannot change that situation. I will repeat that. Until you're able to know something, you ideally cannot change that situation. So the baseline for this is, one, return back to your local government. I'm not saying return in person now. Take out the time, take out the pain, understand who is representing you in that local government. When you do that, seek for a way to engage with that person. Build relationships. Although Nigerian politicians can be very funny and very, sneaky, maybe that's not the appropriate word, but you want to be able to build that relationship, understand what they're doing, establish a contact person with them so that you can be able to track things. Do same at the local government. And I think if we're able to do all of this, we would be able to build a much more civic understanding of what's going on around us so that we can engage properly. Now, my last point is how are laws made? It's a very interesting session which I'm going to discuss about how laws are made, but I'll try as much as possible to be very brief so that I can also take questions if you have any. Oftentimes, there are these misconceptions about how laws are made in Nigeria. For example, some of us have been reading recently, I think a couple of days ago, this popular misconception of the LGBT rights being inserted into the content of a supposed international treaty signed by Nigeria, which Nigeria is a party to, the Samoa Agreement. And then there have been so many journalistic opinions, so many political tone, and so many misunderstanding about what is truly in the content of that bill. I've been privileged to read through that document, and both the amended one, and what was actually like the one in which is currently in circulation, particularly the one in which the Nigerian Bar Association responded to yesterday. The way laws are made in Nigeria are quite very, very funny. Funny in the sense that you would expect that there should be total incorporation of the Nigerian people But oftentimes, that is not the case. And I'll tell you why. And Nigerians, our politicians are so smart in the sense that they have deliberately learned the skills of consistently shortchanging Nigerians when laws are to be made, which is not appropriate. In Western world where people live, that is not done. People are supposed to be carried along with law-making process. Now, I wouldn't want to bore you about the process of the first reading, second reading, committee stage, amendment, and all that, and then goes through the public hearing stage, goes back to the presidency for assent, where the president refuses to assent to the bill. The two-third majority of the joint session of the National Assembly can veto that law, the bill, and for the bill to become a law eventually, which will be binding on you and I as citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But one thing I want you all to know is that laws are not just made for animals. Laws are made for humans, for citizens, you and I. And the overriding principle of laws, or why laws are being made, is to regulate the affairs of citizens, our interaction with government responsibilities, and the duty of you and I to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Why do I say that? Laws are a reflection of our community values. Do not get me wrong, I'm not saying laws are values, but they are a reflection of our community values, our principles, and our concept of life in which we want, in the ways in which we want to be guided. Based on my training as a lawyer, oftentimes I make this comment: the law does not care about your emotions, whether you're Black, whether you're angry, whether you're happy, whether you're gay, whether you're transgender, whether you're straight, or whatever sexual or orientation you belong to, or religious affiliation. The law does not care about you. And that's why you see that most times when you go to the court, or before you enter a court premises, you would see a statute which is called the Lady Justicia, with a blindfolded eyes, with a scale to the left-hand side and a sword to the right-hand side. I know many of you have been wondering, why is that so? Victoria, do you by chance know why that statute is there in the front of a court of justice?
I think it's to remind people that they can get justice from the courts.
Okay, Victoria thinks is to remind people. Ruth, let me ask you as a senior host, why do you think we have that statute in front of our court system in Nigeria? Okay, I'll pass it to
All
okay.
right, the status is there to show us that there is need for equity and the status is there to show us that there is need for equity and fairness. As you can see, her eyes are blindfolded. It simply means that when cases, come to the courts, each case should be treated with equity and fairness. There should be no kind of preferentialism when issues are being handled in the court. So that's what I know about her eyes being blindfolded.
Thank you, Ruth. Gabriel, do you agree with Ruth's thoughts? If you do not, what do you think? Why do you think the image, the face are blinded? He has a scale on a hand, and then he has a sword on the right hand. Gabriel?
Hello?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes,
Okay. Okay, the court is known as the last hope of a common man. So what that Lady Justicia debate is that no matter who you are, it's not seeing you from whatever background you're coming from, whether you have your money back, whatever background you're coming from. And then the scale, like it will weigh the arguments that is being brought to court, then use the swords to give the judgment. So that is what it entails.
Okay. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you so much.
It depicts impartiality.
Thank you. Thank you for yours comments, Victoria, Ruth, and Grace. You all are very correct. But I'll make it much more simpler. The reason why the face of the lady justiciar is covered is that the law, like I said, does not care about who is approaching the court to seek for justice. Either you're black, you're white, you're tall, you're short, Christian, Muslim, pagan. What the law cares about is what the lady justiciar can see on our left-hand side, which is the evidence in which you're bringing, the credibility and applicability of the evidence in which you're bringing to the case in which is before the court. And that's why you see that if you bring very substantial and credible, I keep using the word credible because oftentimes on social media, we have so many trained lawyers who probably had their bachelor's degree from Twitter University and being called to the bar by the Board of Counsel of X, who now administer legal education in Nigeria. I keep making this phrase that the law doesn't care about your emotions. So when you go to court to seek justice, it's not about, oh, because it is morally wrong or morally right. No, the courts want to see the credibility of your evidence. In administering those evidences, the court wants to see the mode in which those evidences are being obtained. And when I say the mode, there are a few things that we need to understand. Recently, a new law was passed, which is called the Administrative of Criminal Justice Act. That law has actually made the adducing of evidence much more easier. For example, I'm trying to make this very interactive and simplified so you can understand how laws are made and why laws are made and why the court system, the critical role in which they play. For example, Mr. A has been said to have committed, let's say, financial crimes worth billions of dollars. The money is being kept in one of Mr. A's son's home in a different state. And then upon investigation and arrest, unfortunately, we rarely have that in Nigeria. The first thing they do is they arrest you before they do investigation. Unfortunately, when the state agencies or security agencies get into the apartment of Mr. A's son, they break in the door, just like supposed EFCC people do now, breaking in the door and then lay hold on the evidence or evidences and takes it to court. The new law says that the mode of accessing that evidence, in as much as the evidence is credible or relevant to the case at hand, the process in which the police or the EFCC uses in obtaining that evidence is irrelevant. So if the EFCC breaks into your house for the not for the purpose of arresting you, but for the purpose of securing evidences to prosecute a case, that mode of breaking is rarely considered in as much as that evidence in question is relevant and credible to the case at hand. And that's why you see when those evidences or when the evidences are presented in front of a court or the jury, the scale tilts to either the left or the right-hand side. So when you tilt to whichever side that says, oh, Mr. A has adduced credible, relevant, enough evidence for this case, the sword is being used to cut. And that's why you see when that is done, the face of whoever is making that decision is not known. That is how laws are supposed to be made and how laws are supposed to be implemented. But unfortunately, we have a very funny system in Nigeria where laws are made based on who is your political godfather. Laws are made, oh, we don't like your party, let us deal with you. Laws are made based on, oh, it's from this part of the country, this is our own state, not their state. And until we are able to challenge the narrative as young people, until we are able to question those who appears to be unquestionable. Until we are able to hold our guard and challenge the abnormal way of doing things, we cannot build a credible civic engagement society for you and I to know our roles and responsibility and how laws are made. So in that process of doing all of this, if you do not understand your rights, if you do not know your rights, if you consistently think that this is your right and not know for a fact, we're just going to be treated as regular people who the government thinks they are doing a favor. So I challenge you all as young people, take the time, take the initiative, take the consciousness to know your rights. And in knowing your rights, there are multiple resources in which you can use. And that's why I asked the question when I started, if I give you $1,000, sorry, if I give you 1,000 naira now, what would you use that money for? Are you going to use the money to buy food? Are you going to use the money to learn about your rights? Or are you going to use the money to subscribe onto your mobile devices to be able to have access to information? So our priorities matters. As young people who are trying to build a career in civic space, you're trying to build a career in advocacy, you're trying to build a career in all of this wonderful initiative you're building, you need to take your time to invest on yourself and be able to know your rights, know when things are to be challenged, and know when things are not going well. Now, lastly, on the issues on how laws are made, like I said, laws goes through multiple processes before it eventually becomes a law. So nobody wakes up one morning and say, oh, we are signing this bill into law. But if we as citizens do not engage in the process of lawmaking, that's why you see that most times when Nigerians just wake up one morning and say, oh, it is time for us to protest, then I ask myself this question: when these laws were being made, when these things were going through committee reading or public hearing stages in the National Assembly, although many of us cannot go there, you don't expect somebody living in the creeks of Ibadan or in Lagos or in Kaduna or in Enugu to travel all the way to Abuja. And that's why we have representatives at that level. You can engage them, you can ask questions, you can challenge them like responsibly to ask critical questions on, hey, Mr. Rep, these laws in which you are being a part of and you're representing my constituency, how does this law affect me, my kids, and unborn children? So what I want to leave you all here with today is, regardless of what part of the country you're from, regardless of your perception about leadership, regardless of your understanding of what laws are, you all must try as much as possible to be engaging. You all must take a step further to ask questions. You all must take a step further away from tweeting away and just making hashtag. Be deliberately involved in building this advocacy and be able to hold leaders accountable. And I'll share a personal story of mine before I close out on this session. I know many of you are wondering, Jacob, you make all of these flowery statements. What exactly have you done? How do we get started? How do we do this? A couple of years ago, as an undergraduate student in Nigeria, I was posted to a community in the north central part of Nigeria where I served as a core member. Upon serving as a core member, I saw a need to give back to an environment. I served as an assistant I served as a graduate assistant lecturer. And during the process of my teaching, I figured out that many of the people in which I was teaching at that time could actually not understand the kind of English I was speaking, normal, regular English, but because you have people who have been used to a particular way of communicating. So I felt there was a need to give back to this community. And I started, after my regular place of primary assignment as a core member, I started to interact with my students after class. What is the challenge in which you're facing? How do you think we can address this issue? And in doing that, I figured out that there was a need for us to actually have proper understanding of the state of education. And that was when I started a volunteer group, went through virtually all the schools in that state as at that time, met with traditional rulers, spoke with pastors, imam, pagan, traditional worshippers, and all of that, just to understand what they're doing. I started from the creeks, not going to the state level to say, no, we want to advocate for good governance, and then you don't even know who you're advocating for. I did all of that. As at the time my service year ended, I returned back to school for a second degree in law to actually understand how laws are made. When I went back to school, I also noticed a challenge in that environment. Kids were not going to school. You would find kids on your dormitory as early as 7 a.m. in the morning. They would not leave your dormitory until around 3, 4:30 when we're returning back from classes. So I asked myself a question: for how long do we continue to have kids who feels contented with where they are, halfly naked, barefooted, and not in schools? So I started a volunteer group of 15 law students from from 500 level up until 100 level. We started as an advocacy group. We engaged with parents, we engaged with teachers, we engaged with school owners, we engaged with local government representatives and all of that. And gradually we're able to build a very formidable team. And today, when it comes to issues of education in that community, we have done our path. We have provided legal services. We have supported advocacies. Like, we have done a lot. So I am not just speaking to you as a motivational speaker. What I'm trying to tell you right now is whatever desire you have in understanding your role as citizens, it is possible, but you need to be able to put in the work. Not because I'm a trained lawyer. I had people who weren't even lawyers who have reached out and we've supported. So what I want to leave you with is Aliu, Pascal, Victoria, Charity, Caroline, and everyone on this call, Ruth and Joshua. You all have a duty to understand that people might actually forget your name. Victoria can build a school in this place today. Aliyu can sink a borehole in this constituency. Caroline can donate books. Charity can actually build hospitals. Joshua can hold sessions for young people. Pascal can, construct roads and build schools. People might forget your name. People might even disagree with the things you're building. People will say, oh, why is Pascal building schools? Why is Ruth donating food to us? Why is Caroline supporting us with branded materials? People might forget your name. People might disagree with your policies, but your impact in changing lives would forever linger in people's hearts. So I challenge you as young people, male, female, Christian, Muslim, Black, white, gay, lesbian, straight, endeavor to know that you have a duty as a citizen. You have a duty to engage your leaders responsibly. You have a duty and a responsibility to, to understand your existence as human, and you have a duty to hold your leaders accountable, and you have a duty to understand that you leave your community in a better state than you made it. And I hope that you all have been able to pick one or two things with the overall interest that whatever you do, always be guided with the fact that you need to make impact, and you can only make impact when you understand your rights, when you understand that there are tiers of government, and when you understand that there's a need for us to build a system and a country that will thrive, and the gains of democracy would be credible enough for you, our kids, and our unborn generation. Thank you all for listening, and I will be here to take questions or any comment from you all. Thank you very much, Ruth, for inviting me. I hope you all have a great time. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Jacob. That was an awesome one. Thank you for getting us enlightened on how to understand our rights as citizens, and not just understanding our rights, how to also, go about getting our leaders accountable. So that's a nice one. So at this point, I would like to know, does anyone have any question? All right,
Okay,
Gabriel.
hello. All right, thank you so much, sir. I really learned a lot. Most grateful. So, sir, talking about citizens' rights and responsibilities. I know you talked about the issue of trying to know our leaders who's representing us and others. So, what about the situation whereby they are not accessible? Because if you look at this, some of these representatives, some of them does not even have constituency office. They all stay in Abuja there. We cannot meet them. And even some of them that you even tried to meet them, I was hearing from someone the other time, that was 2 days ago. or like, okay, he met governor and all that, but they will not allow him to sit in the same office. He will be talking with the governor through a screen. Do you get? So the assessing them is an issue. So what can we do concerning this? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gabriel. That's a very important question. I'm sure I didn't see you on the call when I asked the question about if I give you 1,000 naira, what are you going to do with the money? Oftentimes, I think we have this misconception about, oh, you must see the leaders in person before you can interact with them. In an ideal situation, yes, I do require that you should be able to see your leaders. But I think the world has changed prior to or post-COVID, where conversations, multi-billion-dollar deals on Naira are signed virtually. And just like we're having here now, we're having conversations across two nations discussing about our civic rights and understanding our responsibilities as young people and as citizens. I don't subscribe to the fact that you must see your leaders or your representative in person before you can have a conversation with them. This leader you're talking of has aides, they have special advisors, they have social media presence, they do have physical office. I disagree with you respectfully that there are no representative members from the 774 local governments in Nigeria that does not have any physical office contact that you can reach out to. The qualifying phrase is active office. They do indeed, and I'm not taking brief for them, they do have offices, but it depends on how well you're able to research and get the information that you need to be able to contact them. So to reach out to your representatives, you can leverage on social media, either on their Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I see most of them now have constituency offices on TikTok, Twitter, known as X, or any social media platform to reach out to them. But in doing that, you also want to be able to come correct. When I say correct, that's how you have to know yourself. You don't expect me to interact with you when you have a faceless, I'm not saying you in person, Gabriel, when you have a faceless identity. So if you know you want to hold your leaders accountable or you want to ask questions, make sure you have a verifiable name on social media. And that also goes, like, this is another part of personal branding. You don't want to interact with your representative and your name is OMG. It's used like, OMG, pretty cutie, this and that. No, like some of our leaders get pissed off with that. And ideally, that's not a proper way of engaging. So for me, what I would say is, first, leverage on social media. Their email contacts are there, their phone numbers, their legislative aids. These are ways in which some of us have used, we've leveraged on to actually contact our representative members. I know up until last week, I still was able to write a protest letter to my House of Rep members, and his response was, "Oh, Jacob, after all, you don't live in Nigeria anymore." And I'm like, I told him, do you really want to make, like, I went all out with that about them. And at the end of the day, we're able to have an understanding that it's not about where I live, but about the context of the message that is being passed. So, Gabriel, I would advise that you try to do your research more, leverage on social media of these supposed House of Rep members or House of Assembly members in which you're looking for. And when you've tried all of those means, I don't think you would exhaust all of those available opportunities before you are able to get through to them. I know our Nigerian leaders have a very great and very nonchalant specialty in ignoring people, but I think consistency and not giving up at the first try would actually give you the desired result in which you need. If you're still having challenges with actually connecting with any of your rep member, I'm happy to share some resources with you on how to build a responsive engagement and to get responses from whoever you're trying to contact. And I hope those resources or strategies might be helpful for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Gabriel, I hope your question is answered already. So is there any other person with a question?
Yeah, you answered my question very well. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, that's great. Any other person with a question? Okay, Pascal, I can see that. Please do share the resources with us. All right, okay, Mr. Jacob, please, if possible, we would like to get the resources. Thank you so much. All right, I think at this point, no one else has any questions. So, as a way of wrapping up the whole session, I would like to hear from the Civic champions one key takeaway you got from the session. So let's start with Pascal.
Sorry, Ruth. At some point, the network was breaking. I didn't get everything you said. Sorry about that.
All right, I was saying that as a way of wrapping up the session, we would like to know from the Civic champions one key takeaway you got from the session. One very valuable, important lesson you feel you can share with us. Thank you.
Okay, so one takeaway from me is that the government are actually in tears. The federal, the states, and then the local government. And so, for us, the citizens generally, every attack shouldn't necessarily be at the federal. There are some attacks that should be directed to the state, and there are some attacks that should be directed to the senatorial districts, the constituencies, and even down to the local government, or even down to the town heads like the traditional rulers, the president generals of the towns, and all of that. So it shouldn't be every attack that we should focus. And for me, again, taking away from the right quarters, beginning from the traditional ruler up till the senatorial district, even before you talk about the state and then the federal, I think we would have had more better system than what we have now. But then it's just about the enlightenment we are getting now, which I hope by the time we keep spreading to more young people this time around, because those are whom we can actually impact at this level, and we are hoping that with them we can build a better future. We may not be able to, deal with the people who are the high ups, but then as life continues, some people are fizzling out, the young people are taking over. And if we don't get the young people to understand some of these things now, by the time they take over, it will be worse for all of us. So it's a way of appreciating the facilitator also. Thank you so much. I think this is my major takeaway.
All right, thank you very much, Pascal. That's well noted. All right, Charity, over to you.
Okay, so thank you so much, our facilitator, for the amazing session. So my key takeaway will be to understand the different roles that the stakeholders play, and also to know that the laws are made for humans. The law is a reflection of our community value. And to know our rights, in knowing the rights, we should go ahead to actually research more, read about the constitution and know the rights, so that when we know these rights, we know when things are to be challenged. In knowing when things to be challenged, we should be deliberately involved, not just we cast our vote, then we go. Because if we are following everything that is going on in the civil space, then we can actually ask questions before this law are being passed into motion, and not just afterwards. Then we go and start staging a protest and whatnot. So that's for me.
All right, so that's great. Thank you so much, Charity, for sharing. So let's hear from Gabriel. So what's your key takeaway from the session? Okay, he seems
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
yeah, go
Hello?
ahead, go ahead. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So my take is from the question that I asked him, that what will happen when we are trying to access our representative and you can't get access to them? And then he gave an answer that I really like, that we can use the social media. And I remember when a senator in Abuja was trying to reach out to the FCT minister. I wouldn't talk to her and all that. But when she came on air on Channels Television, she had to respond. And we equally see examples of people who normally, like when they make a post on their Twitter, like Aisha Yusuf, the government will respond to them. So they may not have access to them physically, but they use the social media to access them. So that is my take on it.
Okay, thank you very much, Gabriel. That's well noted. So, Caroline, over to you. What's your key takeaway from the session? Okay, so Victoria, over to you. Tell us your key takeaway from the session.
Good morning. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. For today's session, I got to understand that Mr. Sule Jacob said, until you know something, you cannot change the situation. So this led me to understand that I need to know my rights and also invest in knowledge before appearing or getting to meet the leaders. So I get to also meet these leaders and also my representative of my constituency, then engage with them responsibly, ask questions and get clear answers. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So Caroline says she's going to type her own takeaways and we'll see. So conclusively, we've all got to learn that the roles of citizens is not just to be thinking about their rights, but it's good to know about your rights. So it's not just about thinking. I think we have to come to the point where we know about our rights. And to be a global change maker, it's very important that we start from the local government level. And thankfully, our project, Elevating Youth Voices, Building Trust and Civic Cohesion, we are starting from the local level, the grassroots level. So we are happy about that. So at this point, it's left to us to take the knowledge we've gotten today to the grassroots level and do something with it. So it's very important that we also hold our leaders accountable and not just maybe complaining about the situations in the society. So at this point, I'm going to say a very big thank you to Mr. Sule Jacob for such an interesting, interactive, and mind-blowing session. We are really grateful for having you on board, and we look forward to more sessions with you in the future. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, at this point, we are going to bring the session to a close. Thank you all so much for joining. Do have a beautiful day ahead. And for the Civic champions, please don't forget to check your handbook and carry out the assignments attached to this learning session. Thank you all. Have a beautiful day ahead.